Yes, sir. We are live on YouTube as well as on Zoom. Good afternoon, participants. Welcome to the live session of the course 20th Century Literary Criticism and Theory. Our instructor, Dr. Ashish Kumar Pathak, sir, is here with us. Kindly feel free to join in and clear all your doubts. Sir, we have received a few queries on the Google response sheet. Would you like to take those questions first?
Yes, sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Let me open the Google Sheet and response sheet.
Shall I screen share those questions, sir, if it is okay for you?
Okay. So, should I start with the questions?
Yes, sir. So shall I screen share also, sir, in case if you
Uh,
wish to, I can screen share also, sir, those questions. It will be easy for you
yeah,
to
yeah,
view and
yeah,
answer.
yeah, yeah. Please do that. Please do
Sure,
that.
sir. Sure, sir. Sir, are you able to view the questions, sir?
Just a minute. Yes, I
Okay,
can
sir.
see it.
You can go ahead, sir, with the first question by a student, Vagisha Lal.
Okay. Yes.
Structuralism explanation.
Vagisha Lal questions is structuralism explanation. I think she has not asked the question in a proper way. It simply says structuralism explanation. So I'm unable to understand if she wants to understand that what is structuralism, right? So I have already mentioned it in my lectures that structuralism is a theory which often looks at any text or any work of art as a structure. And when we are talking about structure, they are talking about primarily aspects of language, how language has been used. It is a thorough study of language. It studies relationship between words and what the words refer to. And structuralism believes that whenever we talk of any word or whenever we look at any word, the word does not refer to the outside reality, but the word, what is called the meaning which the word refers to, it is a matter of difference between words, right? So there is no reality that is existing outside that a text seeks to capture. Rather, this meaning is created by various interrelationships that we find among different parts of a text. And in this way, meaning is generated. So, meaning is an internal matter, it is not an external matter. It is not that words are there, sentences are there, something written in a text, and the text refers to some outside reality. So, structuralism, in fact, looks at the structure, verbals, that text as a verbal structure, and it talks about the relationship between those verbal things. That is what we feel. Second point, that structuralism came out of the theory of language that was propounded by Ferdinand de Saussure. So I have already discussed in my lectures that how this relationship between sign, signifier, and signified. And he says that sign has two aspects: signifier, the written aspect or acoustic dimension; signified is meaning, right? And Saussure says that uh, there is an arbitrary relationship between them. Okay, so if we see that TREE, it means we make sense of a tree. So, there is no one to one correspondence between TREE we write and the tree that we see outside. So that is what, his concepts of sign. Then we have talked about this synchronic and diachronic study of language. Diachronic means study of language over a period of time. Synchronic means the study of language at a given time. So you find that how structuralism gives priority to synchronic study of language, and that is more important than diachronic study. It does not believe in any historical evolution of language, right? Uh, and third thing is that Lang and Parole, as I told you, that Lang stands for structure of anything, and parole is individual manifestation. For example, if you talk about grammar, so for grammar, Lang is various rules are there. For example, you see present tense. So present tense means subject plus do or does, and then verb, and then object. That is how you look at the. This is the rule. Now, out of this rule, you can make many sentences. That is called parole. Parole is called individual manifestation of Lang. And it says that Lang is a grammar of any system. So, not only grammar that we find here in grammar and English, but also when you write a text, when you write a poetry, when you write a drama, when you write an epic. So, there is a grammar of writing there. There is a basic structure, and every writer uses that basic structure, and individually he fills up certain things in those boxes, and then interrelationship of those boxes, it generates meaning. For instance, structuralists believe that, for example, take the example of epic writing. So epic has been written by Homer, epic has been written by Virgil, epic has been written by Milton and many other writers. So what a structuralist will say, that there is a basic idea of epic writing, that hero has to be of certain class, hero has to undertake a journey, right? And it is the action of hero which decides the fate of a community. Then invocation of muse. So these are all rules. Milton will use it in corresponding with the Christian world. Virgil will use the same pattern in his Roman, context, and similarly, Homer has used it in the Greek context. So these structuralists are more interested in underlying structures which are responsible for creating meaning, rather than looking for some kind of meaning, right? So you find that structuralism is not an evaluative kind of criticism. It does not value that, on the basis of content, this literature is superior to that. No, it is only interested in underlying structure, which is responsible for the generation of meaning. And meaning is, quite arbitrary. That is what it says. So I think that is how I can explain structuralism in a nutshell. We have read various structuralist thinker, like you have read Ferdinand de Saussure. We also talk about Vladimir Propst, his study of folk tales. We have talked about Roland Barthes, right? So we have talked about Levi Strauss. We have talked about Roman Jakobson, his codes of communication, and how they're all ideas, they constitute this movement called structuralism. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for answering that particular question.
So have
Uh,
have have students joined us in that?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Faculty Dr. Rajkumar, sir, has joined. Sir, can you unmute yourself? Can you turn on your video and ask your doubts to sir?
जी सर। नहीं सर, नो क्वेश्चन नहीं है सर। हम लोग सर्टिफिकेट के लिए कह रहे हैं, तो उसमें पेमेंट का ऑप्शन आ रहा है सर, पेमेंट मांगा जा रहा है उसमें सर्टिफिकेट में।
So, what is your doubt, sir?
सर सर्टिफिकेट के लिए सर अप्लाई कर रहे हैं, तो उसमें पेमेंट का ऑप्शन मांगा जा रहा है।
But exam registration is closed, sir. Right now, one cannot register for the examination.
सर एग्जाम हमने देने के बाद सर्टिफिकेट जब डाउनलोड कर रहे हैं सर, तो उस समय पेमेंट का ऑप्शन मांग रहा है।
Can you write it on the forum, sir? We will just check and get back to you. Can you post your doubt on the forum, course forum?
सर हिंदी में बात करिए ना, हम लोग सर अमेरिका से नहीं है, हम लोग भारत से हैं।
Yes, but I'm not that fluent in Hindi, sir. Okay, I will
नहीं
ask
कोई
one of
बात नहीं सर।
one of
सर
one
हम
of
लोग
our
सर हम लोग भारत से सर हम लोग भारत से है, थोड़ा हिंदी में बात करेंगे तो
हाँ
अच्छा
हाँ
लगेगा
एक
सर
एक
हम
मिनट सर
लोग।
एक मिनट सर हमारा कोलिग है उसका वो बात करूंगा सर मीन टाइम कैन यू प्रोसीड टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन सर posted by Vikram Gupta.
Okay. Could you clarify the difference between criticism and theory and modern context? See, I think that this basic difference between criticism and theory, it remains the same even in the modern context. Basically, like in modern times, what we find that theory is a discipline present or which is there in every subject, whether you are studying sociology, whether you are studying history, anthropology, anything. Theory is everywhere. But particularly in context of literature, even today, criticism and theory. If you talk about that in modern context, so again, if you are confining yourself to the textual interpretation, if you are more interested in the intrinsic features of a work of art, that is what we can call it criticism, that you are evaluating, or you are trying to interpret or analyze a work of art on the basis
Discussion is
of the
going
use
on.
of language or
Just
plot, or
even
any other figures of speech that you find which are frequently used in literature. When we talk about theory, we talk more about what are the forces which have gone into the making of that composition, why the form of that novel is so, under the influence of which social, political, economic, cultural forces. Even if we talk about the content of literature, and if we are in field of criticism, so we will in criticism we talk about intrinsic features related to language, feature related to intertextuality. But when it comes to theory, I think we are more about, what has gone into the making of this text, right? What are the basis for the ideological foundation of this text? What kind of ideology this text propounds or, rejects, right? So when we go into all those questions, I think we are in the realm of theory. And at the same time, I find that the difference between criticism and theory is very subtle. Sometimes the difference is not there. Even in theory, along with talking about all these extra literary dimensions, we also focus on literary dimensions. In criticism also we can talk about that. So I think that is basic difference between criticism and theory, whether you are taking it in modern context or ancient context. Okay. For example, suppose you are undertaking a study of an old text like King Lear. So if you apply the theory of family, if you apply the theory of kingship, if you apply the theory of karma or any other theory to that text, so I think you are in the realm of theory. If you study it from the post-colonial perspective, largely ideological perspectives, right, or economic perspective, or even political perspective, so it will become evident that you are more interested, that is more theoretical kind of approach. And when you talk about criticism of this King Lear, so of course you will be, the emphasis will be more on literary dimension, or devices or figures of speech, or what is called its comparison with other plays. So that will fall in the ambit of criticism. So I think it is a matter of approach. Okay. And with the passage of time, we can say in modern context, theory has become more grounded. Okay, so this question by Vikram Gupta is
Yeah.
answered.
Thank you, sir, for answering this query. Let us take that question from Dr. Rajkumar, sir. Sir, one of our colleague is here. Rajkumar, sir, are you there? I think he left, sir.
Hmm.
So two more students joined, but they left. So let us take the next question, sir.
Discuss the following, sir. What is the significance of pluralism within the Chicago school?
I think that person
How
left. Yeah. In case if he joins, I will call you. No problem. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
what is the significance of pluralism within the Chicago school, and how does their approach to fiction differ from poetry? And okay, so Mr. Ashutosh has two questions. First is, see, significance of pluralism. Uh, pluralism is different from monism. Monism, we call that when a literary critic has only one tool. For example, we talk about new critics, and new critics always have certain words, certain figures of speech with the help of which they try to evaluate or understand literature. For instance, with new critics, you have tools such as irony, paradox, ambiguity, gesture, texture, right, by Brooks, Ransom, Tate, tension. So, with the help of these tools, so that is monism, where whether it is a novel, whether it is a poetry, whether it is a drama, everywhere those critics are applying those basic similar tools, right? That is called monism. But when we talk about pluralism, so pluralist critics believe that different genres of literature, different forms of literature demand different strategies for interpretation and evaluation. So in this way, pluralism of Chicago school is different. That too, for example, if you have to analyze drama, so different strategies are needed. Theatricality, focus on dialogue, plot structure, all these things are important. But these tools may not be necessarily required for the analysis of poetry. So in this way that is. And when we talk about how does their approach to fiction differ from poetry. So for example, whenever they like Elder Oslan, that is a case where he has undertaken the analysis of uh, Dylan Thomas's poetry, and the other critic R.S. Crane, how he has undertaken the study of Jane Austen's fiction that I have discussed in my lectures. So you find that they see that each kind of literature produces different emotional response on the audience, and in terms of that emotional response, you have to decide your strategy of evaluating or interpreting that piece of literature. So in this way, their approach, like fiction, if we are reading Jane Austen's novel, so they produce different emotional impact on us. If you are reading Dylan Thomas's poetry, it may produce different emotional. And in light of those emotional aspects, we find that these sentiments and feelings are dominant. So in light of those feelings and sentiments and emotional impact, we decide that why writer has used these figures of speech to analyze it. So in this way, their approach to fiction is different from poetry. And the second question that Ashutosh has asked, that how did Russian formalism revolutionize the study of literature, especially in contrast to new criticism? So as I told you that, new critics are only, focusing on the tools, literary devices, figures of speech. They do not believe much in genre distinction. But Russian formalists, they believe that different tools. For example, Russian formalists gave separate tools for the analysis of fiction, and even in that analysis of fiction, they talk about different kinds of characterization, different kinds of beginnings, different kinds of endings, right? So that is how their approach is. In Russian formalism, they believe that in poetry, metaphor is not the central figure to generate literariness. They say that in poetry, rhythm, rhyme scheme, they play more important role than metaphor and imagery. Russian formalists believe that even a good poetry can be written with nonsensical word, provided it has a good rhyme scheme or rhythm to make us sing. Right. So this is how you can say that Russian formalists are different from new critics. Okay. So we are done with that question.
Thank you, sir. Now let us move on to the next question.
Yes.
So, set of questions posted by Aditi M, who is a faculty.
Slovakia's concept of defamiliarization is central to Russian formalism. How can we apply this concept to modern forms like cinema and digital media? I think that, for example, every form of writing or every kind of art has its own special tools. When Slovatsky was talking about defamiliarization in fiction, so he said that how plot is a tool which helps in defamiliarization. Similarly, when we talk about poetry, so they say that rhythm, rhyme scheme, even imagery and metaphor, many times they are also called similarity based devices. So, how those devices were responsible for this defamiliarization. So the content is defamiliarized. The experience of feeling that content is defamiliarized. Similarly, if you talk about cinema, cinema has different tools. You can agree to me that cinema has different tools of analysis, right? Other than cinema cannot simply be read as a text. We cannot analyze it as a narrative only. Cinema has its own tools, right? Cinematography and various techniques which are used, they altogether give a different set of parameters for the analysis of cinema in light of that. So if you're talking about that formal study of cinema, so those cinematic tools like the use of camera, the use of sound effect, the use of focus, right? Foregrounding, backgrounding. So all these techniques, all these cinematographic techniques, they can be used uh, for defamiliarization in that. Okay, so that is done. Uh, she has another question. Could you explain the difference between story and plot in formalist tradition? Though I have done the same in my lectures as well, that the basic difference between story and plot, it is very much like connotation and denotation. For example, if we talk of a sentence, so it is the same sentence, like what is difference between literal meaning and metaphorical meaning. The fact is that story and plot, they are related to each other. It is not that they are two different things. Second thing, when we talk about story in formalist tradition, story is often called a sequential arrangement of events in a work of art. Suppose, for example, if you are talking about uh, text like Oedipus, right? Oedipus the Rex or Oedipus the King. So what you find, the story of Oedipus is that he was born as a boy, then you know how he went to the oracle of Delphi. He heard that prophecy that you are, supposed to kill your father and produce children with your mother. So having heard that prophecy, he went away from that place. He went to a different place where he met a convoy of a king. He had a fight with the members, and then he killed the king Lais, and then he married the queen of that reign, and later on, he became the king of that place. How he answered the questions of Sphinx, and then he became a king, and then he married the queen, and then he had children with the queen Jocasta, and then after some time, suddenly his kingdom was affected by plague and other, uh, you know, uh, natural calamities. So at that time, he summons the members of the court. He asks them that what could be the possible reason for all these, malfortunes of his state. And then he comes to know. Then he inquires the truth. He finds that he has killed his father, married his mother, and in the end, he, exits, and then he blinds himself, and then so this is called story from beginning to end, how Oedipus was born, and gradually when he grew adolescent, what happened with him, where he went, what happened, what he became. Here, this is called story of Oedipus. But if you read the play, the plot. How does the plot begin? So you can say the middle of the story or the later part of the story becomes the beginning of story. So plot is an aesthetic structure which disrupts the arrangement, sequential arrangement of a story, and in this way events and their sequential arrangement, this is disrupted to create an aesthetic effect. So that is difference between story and plot, right? So plot is something for which story is the raw material. So plot come out of story, but a story has to be there to develop a plot out of it. And as I told you, in plot you find plot is based on the necessity of probability, necessity and probability. If you believe in, I mean, if you have read about Aristotle, so he says that probable. Every writer, whenever he writes, so he talks about, like when Aristotle talks about impossible probabilities. So these probabilities, these are the defining, you can say, things or ascertaining things for the choice of which events will be at the beginning of a plot, which will be at the middle of the plot, and which will come towards the end. And then when we talk about plot, so it is not that I tell you a story and I want this impact to have on you. No, if a story is given there, that story in that way, listening to it in that way, it will create similar impact. But plot is manipulated to create a different kind of impact, right? Like when Sophocles was writing that play, so perhaps he wanted to create a different kind of impact on the audience. So keeping that impact in mind, the arrangement of story is disrupted. And so that is, I mean, these are the points that you can understand to make a distinction between story and plot. Okay, so the second question is done. Third, how does Bakhtin's view of language and dialogism challenge the formalist position? So, as I have, already discussed in my lecture, that how, Bakhtin's approach was different from that formalistic approach, because in formalism, we find that how the focus is exclusively on language, not on language's relationship with society. But when we talk about Bakhtin talks about this potentiality of language, and primarily he, makes this understanding of language, the potentialities of language, that how language is capable of showing its power in moments of crisis. So, or even his concepts of carnivalesque, in which how language can be a tool of subversion, right? So in this way, Bakhtin is able to relate language with extra literary dimension like society, psychology, culture, right? So the power of language, so in this way his position is slightly different from formalist. And he marks a balance between Marxism and formalism, the two trends which developed in Russia before the Bolshevik Revolution and after that. So Bakhtin is someone who strikes a balance between the two, right? That how he brings about a marriage of that extreme formalism and this extreme content based analysis that we usually find in Marxism. So that is how, Bakhtin's views of language, they challenge the formalist position. What was Probst's contribution to understanding folk tales? And uh, well, when we talk about prop comes in the tradition of Russian formalists, but somehow he is also called the precursor to structuralism, though his views of language were not related to what Sashur had to say. But what we find, Prop's approach to folk tales, the way he studies it, you know he did not analyze those folk tales in terms of the content of those folk tales, the ideological or cultural dimensions of those contents. Rather, he was interested in what is the underlying grammar of all those folk tales. So as you know that how he undertook the study of 100 or more 109 or so folk tales, and he reduced them to 30 basic structures, right? So he developed 30 basic principles, and by which he tried to understand the study. So in a way, Prop was defining the grammar of folktale, as all structuralists have done, as your Levi Strauss has done, or uh, this uh, Jakobson has done, that what is the basic structure of any communication, right? So similarly, what is the basic structure of folktale? And then he finds that all those 100 folktales, they can be reduced to those 30 functions, and they are common. So he develops a grammar of, he develops a lang of folktale. In this way, prop can be related to structuralism. So that is done. Are there any questions? Any more questions?
No other questions posted on YouTube as well as on the Google Sheet, sir.
Okay.
Two participants have joined. One named HP and another one Mehvoos.
Mhm.
Do you have any queries? Participants, please unmute yourself and ask your doubts.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
please go ahead. Yes.
Good afternoon, please.
Yes, sir. I have question got around Roland Barthes, sir.
Is it
Today
Mehfooz or HP? Who is asking this question?
HP
I
is
am
asking.
Sudeepa Kumari, sir.
Okay, okay. Yes, Sudeepa, please go ahead.
Sir, yesterday I read Roland Barthes like Balzac Saracen. You said that first Roland Barthes was a structuralist and later he changed into himself in a post-structuralist. So
Yes.
what means like a major thing that he shifted himself to the structuralist to post-structuralist?
Mm-hmm. See, I tell you that how it happened. If you want to know about that, like if you look at Barth's work, that how in S/Z he is talking about five kinds of codes. Is that okay?
Yes,
That
sir.
how those codes can be very helpful in understanding literature. And what he wants to say, that all these codes like symbolic or proeretic or cultural or any such code, hermeneutic code, how all such codes are common to literature. Is that okay? In
Yes.
every fiction you can find, you can undertake a study of fiction in that way, right? So even in earlier works of Barthes, where he had interaction with critics like Levi Strauss, they were close associates. And then you find that largely early writings of Barthes are structural, or in tradition of structuralism in that way. But this change took place in 1968 was the time when Derrida appeared on the critical scene, and especially his presentation, that structure, sign and play, that took place in Johns Hopkins University. And in that conference, you will find that Barth, Foucault, Bardot, all these stalwarts were present. And after that, you find they changed the directions of their thinking. Is that okay? So if you talk about this pleasure of text, or the concept of jusa, right, that I have discussed in context of Bhatt, right? So there you find that his position is quite changed. Now they are not talking about this stability of meaning or this arbitrary relationship between signifier and signified. They are talking about indeterminacy of meaning. They are talking about this uncontrolled way that language disseminates from the hands of a writer, from the writings of a writer in terms of meaning. So in this way, this change, takes place. How this dismantling of binaries, right? So in this way, his position changes and he becomes post-structuralist. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. It's okay. And sir, one more question.
Especially, I have discussed in detail in my lecture this distinction between readerly text and writerly text, right? That how that writerly text is something where he finds that that open space where the linguistic purpose is always subverted and how it is orgasmically transcended. So in this way, that distinction is very much there. In that way, he says that how in readerly text there used to be a centrality of the author, that with certain meaning he had imbued the text with certain kind of meaning or something like that. But when it comes to a writerly text, it is like onion and various layers of onion, layers of meaning, and it is the reader who writes the text again, right? So closed text, open text, all these discussions, right? So if you remember that, I think you are able to understand how he talks about this multiplicity of meaning. Is that okay?
Yes,
So
sir. And sir, social was also he is saying that speech is more over writing. But sir, I don't understand how can speech can be more over writing, because in writing to me there is evidence, but in how speech can be over writing.
no, no, I think that is what you misunderstand. In structuralist tradition, what they say that speech is always associated with presence. Getting it or not? For
Yes, sir.
example, suppose you say, "I'm speaking at this moment." So whatever I'm speaking or whatever this live streaming is being captured on YouTube, my presence is here, and
Yes, sir.
what I say, that the instructor who has taught you, he is speaking something about that. So often it has been said that this speech is associated with presence, and presence is something that is in front of you, verifiable. Now this presence cannot be contaminated. But writing has always been associated with absence. For example, I write something, then the notes circulate among students or books circulate among readers. So in this way, writing is associated with speech, and these critics, I mean, uh, like Derrida and later on thinkers who subvert this phonocentric tradition. I have talked about, I think in the coming lectures you will be able to understand these terms, this phonocentric and logocentric. So how these traditions have been subverted. They believe that writing has more danger of, I mean, earlier people believed that writing could be contaminated, so therefore writing cannot be trusted. In this way, speech is superior to writing, presence is superior to absence. So this was there. You find the story in structuralist or in structuralist thinking, but later on these things will be subverted. Okay, Derrida says that writing, I mean, what is called reading or speech cannot be imagined without its written image. Is that okay? That
Yes,
is
sir.
what he calls trace. Every speech has a trace of writing. For example, if I say anything, so the image is there in my mind of what I'm saying. An image is always written image. You cannot imagine an image without a drawing, right? So whenever I say the image of something, so when you talk about image is always a sort of confinement, like word, letter, or symbol, or anything. Is that okay? So
Yes, sir.
this is how the speech, writing, debate, in fact, till now, till structuralism you have read, speech is being, presence is being, given priority. Even in structuralist method, you find that, somehow all these elements. For example, even Saussure says that, this about language, or what Rousseau has said about language. So they always give superiority to language. Is that okay? So all these hierarchies will be dismantled later on.
So now, sir, in modern era, means like nowadays in 21st century, what is important? Like speech is more important or writing is important?
See, it is not the question of importance. Both are important. You try to understand what is the point. I mean, all these theorists and theoretical thinkers, it is not that at one time you can say speech was important, writing was not. At one time writing is important, speech is not. No, that is not the case. Is that simply that there should not be any hierarchy, there should not be any privileging over. Both are important, but we should not say that speech is superior to writing or writing is superior to speech. Are you getting it or not?
Yes, sir.
Earlier, what these like Derrida and thinkers later on, what they challenge, that certain things have always been given priority over the other things, and this given priority is not logical at all. For example, you say day is important, night is not important, right? White is superior, black is inferior, man is strong, woman is weak. The fact is that, what was the basis of saying this? There was no, rational ground on saying this. They say that in this way they question rationality as well. So the point is that it is not that what is important and the other becomes non-important. The point is that there should be parity. One should not be privileged over the other. Okay, so one should not be valorized over the other. That is what these thinkers have challenged, and they have tried to bring about a environment of equality in that way. Are you getting it or not? So this
Yes, I'm.
privileging is something that is what they counter.
Sir, one more.
Important, both are important, right? It is not that speech has its own merits and demerits, writing has its own merits and demerits, but the
Yes.
point is that you cannot say this is superior, the other is inferior.
And sir, one more question is like a Claude Lévi-Strauss kinship and active actor network theory. How this is related? Like there is a on Wikipedia I was reading, and there is a given is kinship is a concept or Claude Lévi-Strauss, and
Yes,
there is
yes.
also written that the actor network theory. Like there was also. So what is an actor network theory?
See, when he is talking about kinship, myth, somehow Strauss was talking about the savage mind, right? He was talking about, more of relationship that used to be found in, those primitive societies, right? So myth, kinship in that study, right? So that is what he find, that how different set of relationships were there. And that is what he was talking about, that uh, he wants to say that there are certain universal things in the structure of those societies. Okay, where he looks at relationship in terms of various things like father son, uncle sister. He undertakes a study of family system, right? And what he says that the this kinship system is very much like language, in which he finds that arbitrariness is there. Sometimes systematic things are also there, right? So they also say that there can be an objective grammar of family and society as well, right? So in this way they go in the field of anthropology and others, right? So that is what perhaps you are asking, that is what he says. Even avuncular system he has talked about, where father and son, uncle, and that is how that thing has been emphasized by
Sir,
So they're talking about, they're talking about elementary functionings. They're talking about how these myths are structured, right? And as I told you that on the basis of sameness and difference, Lang and Perol, or for example, if you look at his study of myth like Oedipus myth, so he finds that there are certain patterns of events, there are certain patterns of relationships, so that is what they can be found in those things. And okay, and then he reduces all those things to, like, as you talked about prop, that how those folk tales are reduced to certain function. Similarly, he also reduced these myths to my themes or phonemes, right? Phonemes, like you have. So my theme, it is a bundle of, lang, or what he calls it, super lang of myth. So that is how you make a sense of that. Even he applies that diachronic and synchronic method in the study of myth, right? That how every myth exists at two axes, diachronic axis, and so, like, in your study of myth, you must have seen in my lectures how there are horizontal lines as well as verticals, right? How in those columns certain things have been written, okay, about families. For example, how Cadmos seeks a sister Europa ravished by Jews, that you find in a horizontal column. How Oedipus marries Mother Jocasta, or how Antigone buries his brother. So they all are in one. So that is how you find how diachronic, synchronic excesses are there, and there is an interaction between them, and that is how he undertakes the structural study of myth.
sir, language, you said that language and kinship, Strauss is means connecting language with hierarchy. Is it means how can we connect language development to the anthropologist? Means involve
No,
human.
you try to understand what Strauss is trying to do. For example, you have seen how Saussure had undertaken a structural study of language with the help of diachrony, synchrony, signifier, signified. Is that okay? And how the relationship of words within a sentence, it creates meaning. Similarly, Strauss is undertaking the study of myths, and he tries to show that how that study of myth, by reducing myths into different functions, right, by reducing them to certain functions along diachronic synchronic axis, right? So he finds that how myth is similar to language, right? For example, it is not that any myth refers to any reality outside. If you look at the structures of myth, each myth is illuminating the other, right, or illuminated by the other. So in this way, he is simply trying to show that myths can be studied as, as perhaps Saussure has studied language, and in fact he studies myth in that way. Okay.
Okay, sir. Sir, we say first formalism come, then structuralism come, then post-structuralism come. Sir, is all these are step by step superior, or means like they have a separate idea?
uh, no, I mean, you cannot say it's superior. Like, suppose you talk about development. So you can call yourself superior, but how your superiority could have come into existence had your forefathers not done something? So the fact is that many times all these movements are directly related to each other, and sometimes they are not related to each other. They are very far from each other. For example, if you look at the development of new criticism, so you can say, okay, new criticism was related to critics like Eliot Richards or others. But then you talk about Russian formalism, almost a similar formalistic method. But there was no dialogue between Russian formalists and new critics. More or less, they belong to the same time. Then you find that in England, north of Rye, starts a method which is called structural method, right? Like you find structural method of straws. Similarly, Northrop Frye also does structuralist study of patterns, weather patterns, etc. So he becomes a British structuralist. But there you find that structuralism is a movement which flourished in France. Saussure did something, but after that, it is not that Saussure established a full founded movement. Then you find that how Levi Strauss, who met with this Roman Jakobson, who was a member of Russian formalism. So you find that it is not that one relation, then after that relation, then after that one movement, after that movement. Many times they are not in that way related to each other, but there was a dialogue of ideas, and in this way these ideas developed. Is that okay? I think you need to read the basic book of Raman Sheldon and such books, where you will find that how these movements are related. Their development is sequential. For example, development of post-structuralism is related to structuralism. So that can be taken. Formalism is also related. There are many similarities between Russian formalist and deconstructionist as well. So this kind of relationship is there. Is that okay? Similarity and difference. One movement has certain way of analyzing text. The other movement has certain way of analyzing text. You cannot say one is superior to the other. But yes, they complement each other. And as a student of literature, I think you can take help from all these movements to, undertake a fruitful study of a text. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. And sir, as we read in our college, like they separate the literary criticism syllabus in other parameter and literary theory. But if we're talking about like T.S. Eliot has influenced the new criticism, so how can we separate like literary theory and literary criticism?
As I told you that, a literary theory properly as a discipline, it emerges in the 1960s primarily, right? When uh, it starts primarily with questioning of certain things. Then literary theory is also something where after questioning they always reach towards a definiteness. For example, the word theory itself comes from theo, right? So theo is something, if you look at its foundation origin, it is with theology, with definiteness. Okay, with for God, theo is related to that. So that is how you find that theory emerged. And many times what are called dimensions of theory, they overlap with criticism. So you cannot say that they can be separated altogether. But yes, after 60s, the word theory becomes more prevalent, and sometimes it is applied to all these methods of criticism overall. Okay.
Yes, sir.
But basic difference between theory and criticism, as I told you, when you do, like, you critically appreciate a passage. So what you do, that kind of activity usually is defined with criticism. But it is not that in criticism you will not take into account ideological or other extra literary dimensions. You undertake, you include them as well. Similarly, when you talk about theory of literature, so it is not that you are always talking about the ideological foundation of a text or its interaction with the economy or sociology or culture of that time. So you also talk about the integral elements, like you talk about the plot of that novel, you talk about certain characters, you talk about the use of language at certain point. So their criticism part also comes in. So are you getting it or not? Theory means ideological, where this ideological dimension is more dominant. Criticism means where literary dimension is more dominant. But every good study or analysis of literature is a combination of both. Is that okay? And
Yes, sir.
otherwise, I mean, I have talked about the basic distinction between criticism and theory. If criticism is about how a text has been written, theory is about what has gone into the making of that text. you know so it is difference many times of what, that is what criticism asks, and how, that is what theory asks. So you can understand it in that way, and you can again refer to the distinction that I have made in my lecture.
So, what a literary student should follow the basic books for literary theory?
See, I have given a bibliography and description of my course, but I mean, for literary theory, you can read Terry Eagleton's book as well, Literary Theory and Introduction. Okay.
Sir, easy to read to students, sir.
So easy. I mean, see, you can understand that you have Indian authors as well as Western authors, right? So if you're talking about altogether, so about Indian authors, if you are talking about, so you can talk about M.S. Nagarajan's book. You can read Rajnath's book, right? Essays in Criticism you can read. Critical Speculation you can read. Criticism and Culture you can read by Rajnath. I mean, these are Indian authors. Nagarajan is an Indian author. Even M.A.R. Habib's book is good to follow, right? Very informative and very well written book. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Sir,
And if you are talking about Western critics, so for example, for early criticism up to T.S. Eliot, you can read Wimsett and Brooks. That is the best book
sir.
that I think that I have read. For contemporary theory, or I mean movements of um, 20th century, you better read Raman Sheldon, Terry Eagleton. These are good writers.
Sir, Raman Sheldon is an right. Raman like Indian name.
I don't know, it looks like an Indian name, but he's a British writer.
Okay, sir. Sir, as we read like a
Are you
literary
able
theory,
to see the description of my course somewhere? Like when you join this course, so course description, instructor. So there I have given, very good, I mean, not many, very long list of books, but very considerable number of books are mentioned there. You can pick up, books from there.
okay, sir. Sir, as we read, I'm in post graduation, but how as increase reading books, it become literary theory more complex for me. Is it
Yeah.
okay, or I feeling
See,
overwhelmed?
no. Literary theory, students often find it complex. But see, I have tried to keep my level at very basic for such students as well in my lectures. So I don't know if you have followed it well. I think you should be able to understand it. Okay. Which movements do you find particularly difficult? You tell me.
Uh, psychoanalytic criticism
In
and
fact, I haven't taken interdisciplinary or such approaches. I have focused on only formalistic approaches, but it is my plan to develop another course where I will talk about Marxism, feminism, psychoanalysis, post-colonialism, and such movements. Okay. So, but
yes,
anyway, if you want to, then there is a writer P.K. Nair for Indian students. I think if you refer to his books of criticism and theory, um, that is also a good book for students.
sir, if we pass
But
MA
I
and
tell you, you just read Raman Sheldon properly. I think you will get a very good idea of all these movements.
okay,
Okay.
sir.
Other books I have mentioned, you should read it. Anna, you should definitely read Wimsett and Brooks. You should read Rajanath as well, because for Indian students, though, he has written in a very student-friendly language, and even tough concepts have been discussed in a very simple language. So his book Essays in Criticism, that was published by Doaba House Publications, but uh, you can find if there are new additions as well. So you can refer to that. Okay.
So if means like we read, we pass the net and everything. So if we go in interview, so they will ask you in-depth question, or if we can means like suppose
I
okay,
mean,
they will
which
ask basic question.
which interview you are talking about? After your 10 plus 2, you will go for your PhD interview, right?
Yeah.
So their questions are largely about the research proposal that you have written. Okay. And it is believed that you are well versed in all those basic things and theories that you are studying now. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So
It's
it is
like
not that they will ask you definition of intertextuality or etc. They know that you have come here by passing all those exams. Okay. So there may be questions about your research proposals, but these are very basic things, that every student has to be very well versed in.
sir, like if I am writing like a psychoanalytic criticism of Freud, like a dream interpretation. So, sir, what can we go? What can which type of question can be asked?
See, a whole lot of questions can be asked. So I think that you first read interpretation of dreams and what Freudian psychology is, and then you may be able to answer those questions. I mean, how can I tell you that what kind of questions may be asked? Whole lot of questions are there to be asked. But anyway, I mean, if related to the subject, if your queries are over, it's okay. Later on, you can ask your questions to me whenever you feel like.
Sir, one more question, like Mikhail Bakhtin Carnivalescu, could you please make me understand?
देखिए by carnivalesque what he means that uh, in society there are always hierarchies, right? Somebody is superior, somebody is inferior. Okay. So in our society, there are always hierarchies. But Bakhtin is of the view that language is capable of dismantling these hierarchies. Okay, language is capable of dismantling these hierarchies. That is what Bakhtin says. So he says that what happens in a carnival, he calls it a place like you go to a fair or what you call a mela. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
And there you find that uh, there is no hierarchy there. So similarly, even in language, such hierarchies are not there, or hierarchies are there, but how language is able to overcome this hierarchy, that is what he means by carnivalesque. Okay, just a minute. Hello. हाँ, बेटा हम क्लास में हैं, अभी बाद में बात करते हैं.
Sir, but in a
So
language
he
hierarchy,
talks about heteroglossia, right? Where he says that uh, how language is able to subvert hierarchies. That is what he says. Hetero का मतलब होता है multiple, different. Glossia मतलब language. So he finds that in language there is a varied speechesness. Language में बहुत variety होती है. Is that okay? And because of that variety, he says that language is capable of uh, dismantling all authorities. Is that okay? So that is what he says. For example, he says that in carnival, what happens? It is a collective event in which hierarchies are turned upside down. In what you find, if you go to a fair, you find that foolish people whom you consider foolish, they become the center of attraction. Is that okay? That how a joker becomes the center of attraction. Is that okay?
yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
how kings become beggars and beggars become kings. How opposites are mingled. What is called sacred is profaned. what is called authoritative, what is called rigid, what is called serious. It is subverted. Is that okay? There is a mockery of everything. Is that
Okay.
okay? So
Yes,
that
sir.
is how he says that language is carnivalesque, and especially when you read the language of fiction, it is carnivalesque. है ना, वो सारी ऐसी authorities को subvert कर देती है. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. But like, sir, if we say reality, but English is feel that English is superior to Hindi. So how can we means real life can we
नहीं,
connect like
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि English is superior to Hindi. You know, there is no such thing. Every language has its own strength. Every language has its own weakness. Many times these languages can help each other. So you cannot say that, English is superior to. That is a false consciousness. I don't think that there is any truth in it.
sir, but in our society, like the person who speaks in English, people find that they
because
also.
because we have been colonized by the Britishers. So वो तो
Hmm.
prejudice है ना, but that is not a reality. वो
Okay.
prejudice है, but people who are learned, people who are well known, they know कि ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. There is no such thing. Every place has its own language. People feel comfortable with that. You are in Britain, so you feel comfortable with English. अभी recently there was a gentleman Rajkumar. He was saying कि हम भारत में रहते हैं तो आप हिंदी बोलिए. Why, if a person is coming from the southern part of India, he is well versed in English. So how can you say that you understand me in Hindi? Then you have joined an English course. This is a course in English language, na? So it is our compulsion to speak English for that. Hmm?
Yes, sir.
So I think we should respect this thing, and there is no such thing that every language is great. Tamil has its own strength. Gujarati has its own strength. You cannot say that Hindi is superior, Gujarati is inferior. But still, a climate is made na कि Hindi is nation's language. Therefore,
We
so are you
should.
getting it or not?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, Britishers have ruled over us. So we feel that being English, looking like English, uh, following their manners, this is something that makes you superior. But this is a false consciousness. There is no truth in that. In Hindi, you find your creative writers, your creative literature is equally great. Okay?
Yes,
So,
sir.
hmm. Okay, so if we are done with that, we can bring this session to an end. If you have further
Yes, sir.
questions, you can always pose in the group. We always
Yes, sir.
respond to it if you find any difficulty. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to
Okay.
answer my all questions and queries. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank you.
sir.
Where are you from?
Bihar, sir. Bihar, Munger.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Have you ever come, sir, Bihar?
I was there in Patna Science College for a couple of years. I
Okay.
taught there for 2 years. Then
Munger
we
is also known as a yoga nagari, sir. You should come here. It's the first school of yoga here.
Okay, okay. Sure, sure, sure. If I ever get a chance, I will definitely visit. Okay.
You will feel very auspicious here. Like here is Shakti Pitha and Ganga, and you feel very calm and chill here.
Okay, okay. In Darbhanga, you are saying.
No, in Munger, like it is beside a Ganga
Acha, in
river.
Munger. You said Munger.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
It is
Okay.
beside Ganga river.
Sure, 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 sure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, okay, okay.
Thank you.
Sir,
Okay.
can we close the session now?
Yes, yes, Mr. Murli. I think it went well. All the questions were answered. And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It went very well, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for this live session. It was very informative and helpful. And thanks to the participants as well for joining and making the session interactive. We are closing the session now. Thank you all.
okay, okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.